Hello everyone, I'm Jerred Z, a photographer and teacher here in Omaha, Nebraska. One of the questions I get most often is what editing platform to use. So today we're going to look at the new kid on the block, Luminar NEO, and tell you whether it's worth your time and money. So let's dive right into Luminar NEO and see how it all works. Remember, this is not a in-depth tutorial about everything it could do. It is mostly a top-level view of what some of the promises that NEO makes and how I would use it as a photographer and what the positives and negatives I see. So when you first open it up, you're going to see your catalog. You can see it says catalog right there, and that's where you're going to be able to add photos. You can import individual image, single image edits, they'll appear. And you can also import, you can click plus right here and import folders. The folders on your computer retain the file structure. So this top level folder has multiple folders inside of it. You can just click and see those. You have to remember that if you move that folder, Luminar NEO will suddenly lose its mind and not know where those photos are because you moved the folder. And you can create your own albums. The limiting part of this is that you cannot put albums within other albums. So I can't really have a hierarchy here. So if I had a bunch of weddings and maybe I had a wedding portfolio folder and I wanted to do, portraits and maybe wedding party and reception, each of those would have to be a separate album here. And that's a little bit limiting. You could just do it on your computer, of course, but if you want to do that solely within Luminar NEO, they don't give you a lot of ways to do that. Over here, you have your sorting options. These are kind of limited, as are the digital management abilities. So I could like a photo. If I like it, it'll appear under my liked photo somewhere right there under my favorites. And you could reject the photo, but that's about it. Other than that, you really can't do too much. You could sort by capture time and a couple other things. But if you're looking to manage your photos, Luminar NEO is not where it's at. Where it is at, where they're saying that they're doing a good job of, is in the editing. And so if we click edit, you can click any folder or any photo and just click edit. You'll see the editing platform right here. And you have on the left, you have your layers. And deceptively labeled layers. They are not like a traditional layer like I would view layers. And then you have on your right-hand side, you have some of the basic tools like the crop, and you have a whole bunch of essential tools. Most of these are basically the stuff that you'd see in almost any other editing platform, even on your phones or iPads. If you click on develop, for instance, you can see your exposure, make it darker or lighter, and it is not updating at all. There it goes. That's one of the problems with Luminar NEO, is sometimes it hangs up like that and you're not sure what's going on. Whenever you do that, there's kind of a history panel right here that says edits. And so you'll see a list of the edits that you've gone through. If you want to edit your edits though, you have to go back there, and which is really kind of confusing and frustrating. So if I go back to develop, everything's set at 0, even though I've already edited with other numbers. So if I go, let's do a new one. If I go to develop and make my exposure go up, and it took a delay, and I go to edits, I can change that right here. But if I go back to, for instance, to develop again, everything's at 0. So it makes it seem like there wasn't an edit that was made. It doesn't really make much sense to me. I would imagine that if I change the exposure right here, it's going to stay, that setting's going to stay right here, kind of like it is in almost any other editing platform. I think that they're doing it to give us more flexibility to stack, develop layers on top of each other. But that's traditionally what layers has been for. So it is very confusing coming from other software. The develop module and the essentials, the cropping, they have some AI stuff going on, but nothing too outstanding, except for there's some cool stuff going on in Erase that we'll look at in a second. But what we're here for is really the advanced stuff. And down here, the AI promises that Luminar NEO has made to us to do really amazing things with our photography in a quick and easier than normal way, right? So that's what we're really here for. So let's check out some of those. And let's go ahead and use as an example something that's been touted in their marketing under the power line removal. And I think this is an example of how the promise of NEO is a little bit more than what the actual delivery is. So it's supposed to just be a one-click way that you take your image, and we'll go to edit, and we'll go to erase, and then remove the power lines. I have a power lines, a couple over here, and that's about it for this photo. If I click remove power lines, it's going to start thinking looking, and then it says removing. You know, the speed of Luminar NEO is not insane, but it's not horrible either. And in this photograph, it did a cool job. It took away the lines really quickly. Now, I always tell my students, it's great to be able to know how things are done. So if you want to go and fix them, you can. And Luminar NEO does give us some ability to do that. You can restore, and you could go in here and change your brush, so you could actually do some manual work here. But it's really, you know, it's promising us one click or a couple click edits as a way to save us time and do more creation and less editing. So let's go to another one where it doesn't do that great of a job. We'll look at this one. I would not ever want to take the power lines out, but it says that it could take power lines out. So let's look at this. So we're going to remove power lines, an image I found on a dirt road here in Nebraska, and it's going to think for a little bit longer than the last edit that we just did. And I'm going to keep all this in here so you can kind of get a feel for the amount of time you might be spending waiting and removing, for instance, as we're doing right here, and see what kind of job we get. We're still removing, people. Still thinking. Still thinking. All right, now is my computer working? Because I don't think I remember this taking this long the other day. I'm on an M1. Okay, there we go. I'm on an M1 Mac, by the way, a 16-inch. So I have more than enough power. This did not do nearly as good of a job. So even though, you know, we have this pretty clear and easy to see power lines up here, it didn't remove them. And it actually went in and cut some of the poles out. So, and it missed them down here. You know, maybe it's because this photo is grainy. But again, I think that if they're promising us that it's going to be able to do this, it needs to be able to take a wider variety, a lot of different types of images, and be able to do the same thing. We have to be able to trust the program. And if the AI is not able to do it to most of the photographs, then that's a little bit of a problem. Just because this photo might be a little grainy, because I want the look and feel of grain, doesn't mean that I would expect that Luminar NEO wouldn't be able to see those lines. It does do a good job on some other ones, though. So, for instance, on this photo, if we click on remove power lines over here, it does a much better job. And I think we're going to cut this one out and just skip to the end. All right, we're back. And it did a pretty good job. You can zoom in. It did an excellent job of taking out the sky and making the gradient perfect. You know, the way the sky blends into the white blends into the blue. I could go in here and I could get these small areas if I just select my brush smaller, for instance, and go to erase. Oh, all right. It didn't do that great of a job. Well, you could see, you know, I guess that was good to show you some of the positives and negatives of something like that. Let's go ahead and look at something else. One of the highly touted aspects of this program is what's called Relight, where it's using depth mapping to look at your photograph and figure out what the foreground, middle ground, background is. And if I go over here to the Relight panel, and this is where the creative stuff comes in, let's change the brightness near. And you know, it identified that this is close to us, but it also got part of the background. And I would expect it, but I don't think this is not magic happening, and it looks just basically like a linear gradient in Lightroom. Let's look at the brightness far. I mean, we're looking at exactly like a linear gradient, and it doesn't do anything magical in this photograph. Let's see if we have any better luck under, let's try this one. We have a pretty, you know, easy to see foreground, maybe a middle ground, background. Let's see what happens. And I don't know. You know, it's doing some funky stuff to the background as I do the near. Not sure about this. Brightness far. That one's not too bad. I don't know. It's basically making linear gradients, it seems like to me. It's not doing anything really targeted. Let's try one more where we have like a pretty clear middle ground. You know, foreground, I guess. Brightness near. Yeah, that did an all right job. I mean, it's grabbing part of the old gas pump there. And the background. Did a pretty good job of grabbing the background, although it's pulling in some of the gas pump, you know. I think this would be something to mess with a little bit, but nothing that I'm really impressed with. I think that I could do a quicker, better job in Lightroom. I don't know. Not sure about that one. Another thing that it does is if you're wondering, for instance, how to do something. So if you're trying to figure out how the Relight panel works, if I go in here and I click on edits, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to try to figure out what to do. If I go to the user guide is going to come up, and it's just going to take us to the frequently asked questions. And if I do, let's do a search for color harmony, which is one of the things that it does. I get a 404 error for almost everything, which is kind of frustrating. And then if I do a Google search, most of the stuff that comes up is under like Luminar, not Luminar NEO. So I think there's some work behind the scenes that's happening, but they call this a full release, so we're holding them to that standard, I think. Let's look at portrait stuff real quick. So they have some AI solutions for portrait photographers. If I go down here, for instance, to portrait bokeh or bokeh, I'm not sure I've never known how to say that. And it's supposed to look at your subject, it finds your subject and then blurs the background. We're going to push it all the way to 100 to see. Did anything happen? Oh, there. Okay. So, you got part of the fence, part of the background. I'll admit though, it did select them pretty well, right? It just kind of did some funky stuff near them. It just doesn't look totally right. Let's go on something like this and see if this does any better. Let's go to portrait bokeh and let's throw that all the way up there. It did a decent job. It blurred the background more, but it also created a little bit of a halo around his hair. Not sure about that one. Let's look at the face. We can increase the light on his face. Is that even working? Nothing is happening on that one. Let's see if we can slim his face. Okay, we're slimming his face now. I'm not sure how much use you're going to get out of that, but it's one of the options that you can use. Oh, there, it's getting his face now. I think we're seeing some of the growing pains that Luminar NEO is going through. One of the things I did like a lot is this sun flare option. So if I click on here and I go to edit and I go to sun rays, this is a lot of fun. This is nothing new to the program though, I will say. Luminar had this, and I think some other programs do this as well, although I don't really do it very often. It was kind of fun. And if I place the sun center right there and press a mount, you can see kind of a cool sun flare that, I'll place it now somewhere different. It changes based on where you put it. So if I put it behind this leaf, it really kind of does a good job of making it look like this leaf is illuminated, which is a lot of fun. And then we could change some settings there, including the warmth of the sun rays, stuff like that. But it's pretty cool. Something like that would look nice. I think it does a pretty good job. And let's try another one. This one right here, an old sunset. Let's put a sun ray down there. And I'll show you how it works with the trees. Let's do an amount. It'll look like it's behind the tree, for instance. It does a good job of that kind of stuff. Depending on where you put it, I could put down here and it could see that the hill is there. So the sun rays are, the artificial intelligence changes the way the sun rays interact. It's pretty fun. It's pretty neat. And that looks pretty good. That looks kind of like that looks like a sunset right there. I like that. Right. So I think that there's some promise here. Another thing that's really cool is that when you start to learn what Luminar NEO can do for you, you can really make some neat edits. So on this one, I can really quickly, and easily remove the power lines. So go up to erase. We're going to remove power lines right there. And it'll take a second to think about it. And I'll show you, Luminar NEO basically is something I'm going to keep, and I'm going to use it for specific use cases. This is an example. I'll know that I need to, for instance, to remove power lines, they need to be pretty simple like this. And then I'm going to also replace the sky, and I need a sky that doesn't have a lot of trees and foliage and stuff to be able to easily do it. Otherwise, for advanced sky removals and sky adjustments, I'll need to use something like Photoshop's advanced masking features, which Luminar NEO does not have advanced masking features, at least not yet. So the power lines got removed, and what's really fun is then I can go over to sky, and I could select a new sky. We're going to select that one, and it's going to do a pretty good job of getting that sky in. And I go over here to edit. We can now edit that sky, change the position, the sky adjustments, and we'll warm up the sky, for instance, and we'll brighten it up just a little bit. That's pretty cool, right? That looks amazing. For just a couple clicks and just like 15 seconds of work, that's not a bad job at all. I could work on it a little bit more down there, but it's pretty cool, right? So I think there's some possibility here. There's some pretty cool stuff that we could actually use Luminar NEO for. All right, so that's a quick little overview of how I look at Luminar NEO, and the end part there where I was taking a sky and removing the power lines and putting in something new in. I think that's one of those things where Luminar NEO for me is going to be something I can take a specific photo and say to myself, hey, Luminar NEO could save me time. I'm just going to throw it in there. But for the overall use of the program for general image editing, there are other programs that can do much better. You know, I do some simple edits sometimes in Luminar NEO, and it kind of hiccups. It slows down and speeds up, and some of the design functions are a little weird on the UI. And I'm not totally convinced on the AI's ability to do things consistently. So, you know, the power lines thing, why am I going to go in and wait 25, 30 seconds for the power lines to be fixed and then for them not be fixed? I would rather just spend a few minutes in another program just doing it myself in a lot of these cases. And everything else that it says it can do, almost everything, all the other programs out there can do. So I can, you know, change the matte setting. I can make the blacks a little flatter and stuff like that. And you can do that in almost anything else. So the idea is the money worth it for Luminar NEO? And that depends, of course. It's not super expensive, and it's a program that you could pay once for. Some people are really against the Adobe subscription model, and that's, you know, that's totally understandable. The Luminar NEO does not have a free trial, but they do have a 30-day money-back guarantee. I think that in 3, 5, 6 months, maybe even a year, Luminar NEO might be a lot better. They might have all the things that are missing, and some of the hiccups that we experienced might be all fixed. But as of now, I would say wait, or at least give it a shot and then ask for your money back if it's something that is not going to work for you. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed. If you have questions about Luminar NEO and you want me to test something specific or answer something, just let me know below and I'll help you out.